Put Ghislaine Maxwell in Homestead to tie her up and see what happens. That's season 5.
Right.
That is season 5. Okay. Well, how things been? I think you were on the podcast about just over 4 months ago.
Has it been that long already?
It has.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
So what's been happening? Any are you guys
well,
busy
I can't
filming
go
season 4 now?
We just finished filming season 4. Well, it's actually been about a month now since we finished filming.
Okay.
So obviously can't go too much into that.
Yeah.
We got we have some really cool stuff that happened there. And what's really awesome is I could probably say this is we've got 3 or 4 third-party experts who brought their equipment out that they caught some really cool stuff. So, and these guys are like, they don't just use the equipment, like these guys literally created the equipment,
Okay.
So it's like their level of expertise using the stuff and their credentials and stuff is right where people would, expect to have them.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's really going to be cool what you guys see. So
when is it? Is there a premiere date yet for the release?
All I can figure is if they follow kind of like the past pattern, it'll be May or June. At least here in the States. I don't know about anywhere else. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Listen, and how has life changed?
Oh man.
Since the show started, yeah.
Oh, since the show started? Oh,
or put it this way, since you've been on the ranch.
Well, I would say it's for the better, actually.
Okay.
We've definitely had, overall, it's better. My wife and I, we've had a lot of crazy experiences at our house and stuff. Like I think I talked to you about some of those last time we talked.
I remember. Yeah, you did. You touched on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was from the Hitchhiker Effect, right?
Yeah. So we had some of that stuff happening. Obviously, that's kind of been more recent than right when I first started, but
yeah,
overall, it's gotten better and stuff. And it's just opened some other doors and things, and just jumping on that. And so I'm starting to go out and talk a little bit more about the ranch and being on it. Kind of doing doing the live speaking events and things like that. Obviously, we've got the website going, and we're adding stuff onto that all the time. Skinwalker-ranch.com. And then, we've been adding stuff onto that. Obviously, with filming, it was a little bit harder to get stuff on there. We were focused on the filming side of things.
Yeah.
But we've been adding more content lately, and since filming's been done, and we've been able to jump on there. I don't know if you saw, but we actually had like one of the livestock died under some mysterious circumstances a couple weeks ago, right around the time filming ended. We could not get a vet to come out and do a necropsy. All the clinics that we called, they were either too busy because of the time of the year, or actually, this is the interesting thing, is one of the clinics actually said they would never come to the ranch. So I don't know what the reasoning is. They want to elaborate on that. And so it's like, you got to understand, like these veterinarian clinics, they have like anywhere from 6 to 8 doctors or something like that, and all of them from that clinic said they would never come out. So I don't know why. But
what's the the people in the area that kind of live in that the Uinta Basin area, what is do they have like some sort of fear of Skinwalker Ranch? Or
I think it's you have a good mix. You have people who are like, I would never go out there. You have people who are like dying to get out there, and then there's people who are obviously interested in it, but they are like, they're very interested, but they're not like going to do anything untoward, or, they're willing to wait. Or if they have an opportunity to talk to somebody about it, they will, things like that. So you get the good spectrum, but most people out here, I think it's kind of really made its way throughout the area, and most people are pretty excited that the show's going and brings light to the area, if you will. And they can see what's happening on the ranch, and it's been one of those things that, from my understanding, most people have had a fascination with or are interested in. But then you also have the people who are like, think we're just blowing smoke up people's rears,
I mean, anything with regarding to that touches on the paranormal, UFOs, that there's always going to be, it's such a double-edged sword. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So you definitely, it pretty much comes included that they're going to be skeptics, and yeah.
And one of the things, like, I think I mentioned this last time, when you start getting into this realm, if you will, you start hitting into people's belief systems, or more importantly, their non-belief system, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost more challenging when you're talking to somebody and you start hitting their non-belief systems, And so it's like, I have my thoughts of what's going on out there, and then I have my religious and spiritual side of what I think it is, and things that I've had happen. And it's one of those things where it's like our perspectives are always formed by our own experiences and those things that we've gone through, right? So it's like I could see something and someone will see the exact same thing, but we'll have two different interpretations. And that's where it's like, I'm not here to tell somebody how to believe or what to believe, kind of thing, but I will have that conversation of why I believe it is what it is, and through those experiences and things. And then it's also one of those things, an important part of that too, is we have to take that retrospection, like take that step back and try and re-examine it in all the, and really question yourself, and reestablish that and then move forward,
Do you think a lot of it has, a lot of the things you guys experience, a lot of it is kind of spiritual. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Where you get a sense of, something is looking at you, or
it's some of the it's the harder stuff to talk about sometimes, because we don't have that proof, that hard physical evidence, right?
Yeah.
Some of it's more the circumstantial stuff. Some of it's like those feelings, those thoughts and stuff. Like there's times where I've been on the ranch, I come home and I get really sick, and I didn't eat anything that was, food poisoning type of stuff or anything like that. And was it because I was on the ranch and something happened out there and I got sick? And that's kind of a rare thing, but at the same time, we've seen and we do have good evidence that people come out and do have physical reactions to the ranch, or something happens on the ranch, right? And so it's like, it's those things that you have a lot of that stuff happen, and you just don't have a good, that good hard evidence to show it's connected, but a lot of circumstantial stuff. And at some point, when you have 100 pieces of circumstantial evidence, it's pretty clear cut, and it points right out.
Well, and especially if it's a whole group kind of experiencing the same thing. And I think we touched on this the last time as well, but there seems to be a connection between Native Americans and Native American Indian tribes and stuff, and the paranormal, especially in that area. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
So, I've actually been thinking about doing some videos on this. I have a really good friend of mine who's Eastern Shoshone, and he's in the area, and he's actually, I met him through Thomas, actually. And I've been growing that relationship and stuff. And we have this conversation all the time too. And it's like one of those things, like, for whatever reason, a lot of that understanding that, say, Europeans had may have been lost or was destroyed, years and years and years ago. But that, because their culture is so much closer to that, really they were there, or still are, they still have that that religion, I guess, if you will, or that cultural connection that they, there's still a lot of them that are trying to keep that alive, do a really good job of that. And that's what was really interesting with my friend here, who, we have these conversations, and then and we've been able to talk about that subject. And it's like, look, there's different lenses that we see things through, but that doesn't mean that we lack some understanding. But at the same time, it's like there's just different ways of seeing it, and that's what I've been trying to think of how to really approach that with him, and really have that conversation, because I was like, I guess in my mind, you go back, you have the Celts, you have the Vikings, you have these different groups who were very much in that belief system, that nature, and there was a connection, and there were spirits, and there were all these different things. You had your trolls, you had your gnomes, you had your sprites or your elves or whatever they wanted, these traditional mythological creatures and stuff that we hear about, the Grimm, the Ashwives, and all these different things in these different cultures. But then you come and talk to the Native American side, and they have very similar creatures and some very unique ones also. Well, all these cultures, but there's a lot of similarities between a lot of them. The one we were talking about just a couple weeks ago, I can't remember the pronunciation, but essentially it's translated as shade or a fade or like shadow man or something like that.
Okay.
And there's a lot of interactions with these, and a lot of really crazy stories, and then we've had some stuff happen here at our house over the last couple of weeks that, I informed him of, and he did some clearing ceremonies and stuff with me, and he actually made me a really cool gift, and I'll probably have to show that one day. And it was kind of that energy thing, like he was talking about, like whatever, like these beings or these creatures would recognize that as a form of protection, long before other things.
Okay.
And so it's a really broad subject and a lot of really cool things, but there's a lot of cool connections and a lot of history and a lot of things, especially in this area. And if you're open-minded and have enough respect, you'll see it, you'll learn, and you'll start forming some of these relationships with individuals like that.
So, I mean, and are there still tribes surrounding that area that are still living there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So there's the ranch is bordered on multiple sides by the actual reservation.
Okay.
And the main and like the main offices and all that stuff's just north of where the ranch is. They're only like 2 or 3 miles away from us. So yeah, we have a lot of interaction. And I would say there's a lot of overall good, positive interaction. We actually have an opportunity to go and speak at one of their high schools here in like next week, actually. So I'm really excited about that. And the one teacher that reached out said, a lot of people are actually going to come, and they're really excited. So it'd be a really cool, positive experience and stuff. And, and that's what's cool is like, there's that connection between science and this and the spiritual realm, or the things that we don't really understand yet, and seeing that crossover and stuff. And that's what's cool at the ranch.
When you started out, again, we might be regurgitating some questions from the last time, but were you aware of the reputation that the ranch had?
Not really. It's something that like I'd heard. I'm very familiar with the term Skinwalker. I grew up with the Shoshone-Bannock reservation right across the river up in southeast Idaho, where I'm from, and so I've heard plenty of the different stories and things, and some of my family members up there had told me things that had happened, and there were roads on the reservation that everybody was like, yeah, you don't drive down that road at night. Weird things and crazy things can happen. There's that kind of stuff going on up there also. And so I've I've always been a history and a fantasy and like that's what's always interested me, right? So I read a bunch of books. I love reading the history about the stories and the areas and things, and actually what really happened in areas and how that could have changed stories or something could happen, right?
Yeah.
But when I first came down here, yeah, I'd probably heard about Skinwalker Ranch passingly. I never really understood what it was or, had much of an interest. I guess you should say. I just I don't know why. I just didn't, and then when I went out, or when Tom called me the first day to go out there and do security, I was like, what? Skinwalker Ranch? And my wife was like, serious? Like, do you realize where you're going? And I was like, no. So it was a cool learning experience. And we get out there and nothing happened. And it was Halloween. It was the first night I was ever out there. So
Yeah,
I just, it was cool. I just had that 5th year. I've been on the ranch 5 years, and we were out doing a live feed thing through our website and interacting with people live during that. So it was pretty fun.
Okay. I'm going to throw in some questions that people emailed me to ask you. And the one is from Mark Roberts. He wants to know, what's Robbie Williams like?
Robbie Williams?
Yeah.
I thought Robbie Williams was very down to earth. He was extremely gracious, and he was very interested in what was going on out there. And he's had a very large interest in the realm, if you will. It was really fun. It was a really good time. He was out here for 3 days, and we had a really good time. So he was, I was very impressed. I thought he was a really cool guy.
Okay. That answers that. And then the last time you've mentioned devil worshippers, that there were people trespassing. How do you know they were devil worshippers?
We were able to track them down through social media. So we were able to find who they were.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there a lot of that still happening?
There's people that are always trying to get on, and we've had other incidents and we've had things security wise. And so, it's something that we're always thinking about, and we have to keep our eyes open for. And there are, you should see the emails, especially now it's been going, with the television show and stuff.
Yeah.
It's crazy what comes out of the woodwork.
Really? In terms of in terms of what specifically?
Well, you just see like people's mental state, if you will, and see what they believe. And it is one of those things. Like I said, I'm not here to tell someone what to believe or not to believe.
Yeah.
But based on my experiences on the ranch and off and before, I've had some really cool things happen before I even knew the ranch was even a thing. Some very powerful spiritual experiences is the only way you could describe them.
Okay.
And then with that devil worshiping, and if I was talking about that, I probably told you about the suicides and stuff that I was on a couple years later as an officer. And and the connection there was that the energy, the evil, because there's no other word to describe what that energy is or what that is.
And you felt that same energy that night.
Yeah. And so I'm very familiar with what that feels like, and and that puts you on edge. That puts you on kind of high alert kind of thing. And then I've had the experiences on the opposite side where it's that really light and good, and so it's like I'm very convinced that there's good and evil just from seeing other things in the law enforcement thing, being on the ranch and different experiences there, and this is what we kind of talked about, is the ranch it magnifies it. It's a place that, for whatever reason, again, it magnifies what's that energy, if you will. So like there's days where you go out there and the ranch, it's like the most amazing feeling place it could be. And then other times it's like it's dark and heavy and you can't wait to get the heck out of there.
So we spoke the last time that the ranch is basically like reactive as to sort of who visits it.
So we don't know if that's like proactive and when someone new comes out the ranch reacts, or if if it proactively does something, you know what, I don't know if we can really definitively say that, but yeah, there's definitely when new, there is a novelty aspect of it where we do know this if someone's never been there before, there's a higher chance of something weird happening or some kind of reaction to that person, or that person does experience something.
And kind of when digging or disturbing anything on the ranch, right? In the same.
We've done, if you went through the television show, you can see that we have done some extensive digging and things like that. And and not all the time. That's one of the things, even with people, like, not to say every time someone new comes to the ranch, something crazy happens, because we have plenty of times where people never get to the ranch and it's like nothing happens, but there is, not to do a blanket statement,
No,
but
that's what I'm actually getting at is, I don't know if you watch that that Jeffrey Epstein story, and I'm going to go so far.
I don't. You'll have to enlighten me.
Okay. Anyway, so it's this really rich guy from, I think he was from New York, and he was friends with a bunch of high-powered people, and he eventually got put in jail because he was basically trafficking. Yeah, you heard of the story?
Yeah. So I'm familiar with that. I didn't know if there was like a new thing that you were.
Oh no, no. So, well, he's dead.
He's mysteriously,
yeah. And but his, I think his right hand woman or accomplice or whatever, that Ghislaine Maxwell. She's still in prison, and yeah, man, you know what? I would love to see them like do an experiment in the name of science. Put her on Skinwalker Ranch.
Right.
And just see what happens.
Right.
In the name of science.
We would have to figure out what the experiment is, right? And what the deliverable is and what would we be looking for, because that's kind of thing, like I've been talking about this lately, is we call it the observer effect.
Yeah.
And kind of one of the experiments I've been using as an example is our telescope.
Okay.
Where we went out there specifically to try and see use visual equipment to see if we could find some kind of disturbance above the triangle, right?
Yeah.
And that was it was an optical experiment. So, and think about what happens is the devices that these telescopes are connected to, all the star that they're trying to see. So think the telescope's here, the triangle's here, and we're trying to see through the triangle at a star, right?
Okay.
And then shoot a rocket up and see what happens optically with the propellant or the rocket itself, to see if there was anything happening visually, right? So what happens is that those closed network systems that have all these millions of stars inside that database, again, it's not connected to the internet, it's on the hard drive in the equipment, right?
Yeah.
Multiple microscopes. These, the most expensive one was like $14,000, something like that. And they were all at least minimum $3,000 to $4,000 or $5,000, right? So these are very expensive.
Yeah.
The individuals using them have 60 to 80 years experience running these combined. There were 3 gentlemen out there, all of them 20 plus years experience. Well, they can't lock onto these stars that are going through the backs on the backside of the triangle, because those stars are being removed from the system, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens next is they go, okay, well, they start going, okay, what can we do? What can we try and do to save this experiment? Try and get it to where we know we're looking through the triangle there. They tell me to go over with a laser pointer and start pointing up in the sky to see if they can see the beam and look at the beam.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. A very visual thing, right? Well, we start seeing the laser beam bending. We see it splitting. We see all this crazy behavior that would we have really been able to see that happening had we not gone out there with the original experiment. So we went out there and we had something entirely unexpected happen that we weren't even really thinking about at that time, but it was a visual thing that we saw. So yeah, we went out there looking for something visual to happen, and it happened. And you know, and that's just one thing that happened that night. That was a big visual thing. Like, we also had probably one of the most clear UAP sightings that we've had, and that's recorded, you know, and this is what sucks, is no matter the video or the picture, it's never does it justice as when you're standing there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But and so this comes back to the observer effect. We were looking for some kind of optical effect, right? And but it was the lasers. It wasn't, and that was just an attempt at trying to get the other visual experiment to work, right? Okay. So, but we were all thinking visual effect or something visual, right? Yeah. So, did we have a part in, or was it just just happenstance that we found, you know, that there was something up there and we could, and it was moving around. I had to keep finding it, saw that, and we could see that this spot was moving, and it kept, as I was hitting it with the laser, it kept bending it, it kept splitting it, it kept doing all this crazy stuff. And it was like, you know, anywhere from 3 to 1,000 feet above us, above the triangle.
It almost sounds like you guys are pointing the thing into another portal.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. Sense.
Yeah.
And I can say this, is we've gone out there multiple times now during other experiments, and in some of these weren't with the television show, and we've seen that same effect where the laser's bending, or it's splitting, or it's doing something like that. So we've been able to see it multiple times now.
Wow. Jeez. Okay.
So it's really cool.
Another question that was emailed to me from Chase Stevens. How can people legally visit and go into Skinwalker Ranch?
As of right now, I guess the only way is to be invited.
Okay.
There's no public access at this point. Yeah, you know, there's other individuals, and usually there is a reason why we're bringing them out there, whether it's for they're some kind of expert in their field, or if, you know, or they're, yeah, right. So Robbie was before any of this, you know, he was connected to another documentary, so that was before any of this. So
with you know, since we're on the topic of Robbie Williams, Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 has, I mean, he was like deep into the whole UFO thing as well at one stage. Has he ever been on the ranch?
Not to my knowledge. Not during my time that I'm aware of. I don't know if he was out there before or not.
Yeah.
So I know, you know, we have brought some other individuals out, obviously. Some of them were interested, and I guess, yeah, they were, and friends were, and there were relationships there where it worked out. And yeah, so, but as of right now, there's no way for the public to really come out, because we've seen enough to know that, yeah, there is a potential for some kind of medical episode. And there's been some that have been off camera, and at different times where we've had things happen where we've literally had to rush people off the ranch and stuff, and they were having a very major medical episode. And so it's one of those things that we take very serious, and we just don't have we don't have that financial, safety net, if you will, if something does happen, because people are so happy, and whether or not they want to come out and be like, oh, I went out there, something happens, they'd probably still be the person that goes, oh, well, I really didn't understand, it's.
I was watching an interview with Brendan Fugal, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch, and he initially didn't want any of this to be televised. He kind of wanted this as a private, his own little private research or experiment or whatever. And apparently the History Channel, they were chasing him for quite a long time.
So what happened was, yes, Brandon was very against the television side of it at first. It was he when he got in 2016, he was very much a skeptic, very much like, yeah, okay, whatever, and kind of went out onto the ranch with a pretty negative attitude about it, and actually ended up having something happen that completely changed his attitude towards it. He's always been interested in this kind of stuff, you know.
But just to interrupt you, just on that point, I remember seeing an interview with him, and now I know it's him because I've seen it again since. He's got a very distinct way of pronouncing, I think, his R's. I think it is. And there was actually an interview with him where he's kind of like blacked out, like you would if someone that wishes to remain anonymous, and that was him. 100% that was him. And
that was from the Robbie Williams time. So
it probably it was before the show.
Yes,
it was way before the show.
Yeah. So when they came out and they approached this, Brandon was like, yeah, sure, like I'm okay, because he was told that, because we had George Knapp and this Jeremy Corbell. They came out and they were the ones that were wanting to do this, right? And they were like, oh, we got some new information from the past. We want to do some stuff. And from my understanding, there was nothing new. It was kind of a bunch of rehashing on some stuff. But anyways, Brandon was very adamant. You're not going to show who I am. I don't want people to know that I own the ranch, because at that time he was worried that it could potentially harm some of his business relationships and stuff. Because anyways, he didn't want to be known. And when the individual who finally was able to make, like Tom was kind of that individual that people ended up, he kind of became the public face for people who were trying to get a hold of Brandon, if you will. So it got out there that Tom was pretty much the superintendent and the one running it and everything. And
your brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tom Winterton, one with Black Hat on the television show. He's so these other two individuals who had been involved with some pretty big projects on the television side of things with History Channel and some other networks finally get a hold of Tom and are able to show, hey, this is who I am. This is what I've done. I'm not the low level guy trying to make a name for himself. I have the name, I have the backing, this is my idea. And it was a couple months process, gaining that trust and with Tom and stuff before he finally went to Brandon and was like, hey, this is the guy, this is what he's done, pretty much vetted him. And then we were out shooting the pilot and stuff. And essentially Brandon, after some negotiation and stuff, and some convincing, the late Kevin Burns from Prometheus was the one who's like, look, there's no show without you. Like, you have to be you have to be in it, and Kevin has had a gift with talking to people and stuff and changing their minds. And so he was able to get Brandon to okay. And so, and that was the only reason Brandon went public, was because there was no show without it kind of thing at that point. So
what's your opinion on Jeremy Corbell?
I got along with him when he was out here. I thought he was not genuine enough, and I don't have anything against him. I just I haven't had that much interaction with him outside of those 3 days. And that's I don't really, I guess, follow him or anything. I just and I thought he was genuine enough in what he was trying to do. I was surprised at some of his viewpoints from him being from California and stuff. So just kind of caught me off guard that he would kind of thought some of the same things, and I was like, oh, okay. So I was kind of surprised. But
okay, yeah, he did that the one documentary about Bob Lazar, which came out on Netflix, I think, a couple of years back. But
okay,
but I mean, in any case, the other thing is we talked I think during the last podcast we spoke about that a lot of the stuff that you guys catch on camera which you think is pretty awesome, doesn't make it to the final episode for whatever reason. Wouldn't it be like cool if you guys can take all that footage that doesn't make it to the final episode and like put it on the website?
So where you're crossing over into is we have you have Brandon and his contracts with the television, with Prometheus and History Channel, right? So you have that group over here, and we created the website, and it's its own little thing over here. And so I don't know if that might eventually happen. I don't know. Brandon is a 50% owner in everything, so they're both parties on the television side. He's one of the executive producers. He's 50-50. So I don't know. I can't speak for that.
That could be pretty cool though.
I think it would be cool too.
Yeah.
Yes. I would hope that in the future, maybe that's something that we could have happen where we use both vehicles to get to the same place, and really combine those two in some way. Well, not combine them, but have a good partnership.
Yeah.
But this is what's cool with the website is with our live feed cameras and stuff, we are catching more things. And the insiders, the members, they are so vigilant. I don't know. I don't think we were talking about this the last time, but we just barely launched the website when we were talking the first time, and where it is now is so crazy. Like there's a couple of them that are so dedicated to this. They've literally built like the spreadsheet, and it's been included into the website now. And it's an Excel spreadsheet, and they have like 10 different categories. It's very well organized, for what it is. And you can go on there, and they have like every month they have, if they've caught something, they show what day it is in that month, and they have clips of it. So you can go back through and look at things that some of it's mundane stuff, but they thought it was cool and interesting to see, So there's some videos of like elk running around on the property. But then on the other side of that, we do have some things that they've caught that are like, okay, what is that? That is something that's interesting. Some very cool footage that way. I'm thinking of one in October where it looks like a meteor comes in and actually hits the ground miles south of the ranch. But talking with Eric, he's like, that's a common effect on some of these things where when the meteor is coming in and it's burning up in the atmosphere from a certain angle or from a certain distance or sometimes it looks like it actually bounces.
Okay.
So it there's interesting things like that, but and they're catching stuff all the time, and then we are interacting with them all the time. We're talking with them. We're coming up with new ideas for experiments. We're doing things with them all the time and giving people 24/7 access to security cameras on the ranch and access to the ranch itself that way. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Because it kind of gives the viewer a chance to kind of, in a sense, be part of the team. Yeah. And, with the experiments that you guys do, how does that, and well, do you know if it differs from the stuff that was done during the Bigelow days?
So let me think about this. So when it comes to Bigelow's stuff, we've got a collection of really cool stories. Or ghost stories, because we were never given any data. Which
just to jump in there, because that's something that I wanted to ask, because I think all the data is classified, right?
No, some of it may be. I don't know, because there was the partnership between the government and Bigelow, right?
Was that
but people need to understand is Bigelow was a private company or a private individual, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with Brandon. That privately owned information is Bigelow's. He does not have to give that to anybody.
Yeah.
And I think there's a reason why they do that. And it's not just Bigelow. Like any big government contract and stuff, you eventually see it being connected to a private company, because private companies can do things that they can go do things that they want, and they don't have to tell anybody.
Was he connected to ORSAP? I think that's what that program is called.
Yeah. So from my understanding, and we actually, I don't want to give too much away because you're probably going to have some of these answers in season 4, because we had an individual that we brought to the ranch that was able to give us some more information. But what I can say is some of this is out there in the private or out in the public domain now, I think.
Yeah.
So Bigelow comes in, purchases the ranch, and yes, there was a contract with Bigelow, and I believe it was Harry Reid, I think he was a senator from Nevada, who eventually got this contract, and it created the OSAP, or the two programs essentially, and Skinwalker Ranch was the genesis for all these things, right? So there's this $22 million contract that is given to Bigelow to go out and do these experiments and try and figure out what's going on, right? He has his team of scientists, he has his security team, he has all these people, and the individual that we brought out this year, he was there during all that stuff, and that's all I can say at that point.
Okay.
But but yes, all those programs from the 2000s stuff were genesis were created because of Skinwalker Ranch and the investigations going on there. But this is the thing is, at the end, in 2016, what I can talk about is there was no data given to Eric Bard, our principal investigator. There was no scientific data whatsoever. There were meetings. There were some meetings between Brandon and Eric at that time with some other individuals who had been doing stuff on the ranch, and they did tell Eric some things, you know, and things to be careful of in some private conversations and stuff. But there was no hard physical, hey, we did this experiment, this is what we found, here you go, you know, here's a good starting point for you. So what we essentially, the challenge that we're facing now is in 2016 is when the only information that we can really say with confidence, it starts in 2016. That's when our investigation started. That's when when Eric starts going through and starts figuring stuff out, you know, and he had some personal things happen at his house in Salt Lake. We've also had obviously a lot of things happen on the ranch itself.
Yeah.
And that's what's formed the direction of the investigation to this point. And then the television show happens, and you're at, you know, on our website and all this stuff. So, and this is where it's like really interesting is people like, this is so new, really, the investigation. Like we're still trying to figure out the direction we need to go, but that's the thing, and like kind of going back to our telescope experiment, we're out there for this reason. We have something else happens, and it takes us all the way over in a whole different area. Yeah, you know. So but they tie back together. So that's what's been fun, is seeing where this is going and being led by the data.
But you guys ever get kind of like frustrated? And this would, you know, this is kind of more saying that I suppose Brandon in his deal, you know, the whole deal that was set up to acquire Skinwalker Ranch would have been to, okay, you know, there's something, you know, there's some things happening on this place. Do you want to, you know, acquire it and see what's going on? You kind of think that he'd be privy to everything that was done, in a sense. And I guess what I'm getting at, do you guys sometimes get frustrated in almost like you guys have to now find out for yourselves because not everything was disclosed to you?
Yeah, so like I'll put it this way, is as a law enforcement guy, when I get called to a scene or say a new scientific investigation, right? It's pretty much, you know, when I show up, it's pretty much expected that I get all the information that I ask for, right? Yeah. Same thing with Eric and on the science side of things with the ranch, is if he's going out there and being told that all these experiments are going on, it should be pretty much well understood that he needs some information to go off of, right?
Yeah.
but that didn't happen. So it's like, right? So if this is a law enforcement thing, like if you withhold information and we know you're withholding information and we have that evidence, I can get that warrant to come in and be like, look, you get this or you're in jail.
Yeah.
I get this or you're in jail, right? We don't have that.
Exactly.
That recourse, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of those things it is frustrating because again, there was the report that was given in Congress supposedly, but as Eric and Travis have said, it's a collection of really great ghost stories and theories, but there's no scientific data. There's no anything that points to any of the experiments or anything. And that's where, as frustrating as that is, it's also kind of one of those cool, probably good things is we went in there basically with a blank slate, and again, I came onto the ranch essentially 2 years after it was purchased. 2016. Yeah, I was out there for Halloween in 2017, but I really wasn't heavy security until early 2018. Is when it really started picking up for me on that side of things. And that's when I really started having more experiences and seeing more things and really getting that, accruing the knowledge that I have now. But yeah, so it's one of those things that it is very frustrating. Yes.
But I think that makes the whole, I mean, since we last spoke, I've delved into a number of topics, the whole Roswell incident, Bob Lazar, Travis Walton, all this stuff. And with none of those things, all of them are a double-edged sword. Unless you were physically there, and people are divided, they either believe it or they don't believe it. There's very seldom is there middle ground to, maybe it did happen, or do you know what I mean? So it's very, and this is kind of like frustrating in a sense where, if there is information that was being withheld from this group, which would be you guys, doing experiments and stuff, and which could potentially be harmful. It's I can imagine it can be frustrating.
And I saw that you talked with Chris Bartel.
Yes.
I saw some of the things you were talking about, and I think Chris is a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's
Great
been
guy.
a resource that has been willing to talk to us and stuff. And he essentially was able to make sure that there's things that he can talk to us about, right? Because he was the guy on the ranch doing security from 2010 to 2016. And so we got a lot of really good information from him. And that was actually one of the first things that he talked to us about when we brought him out in 2019. I think when we were doing the first season, is he was like, I need to pass some information to the next crew coming in because that's a military and police thing. When you have a guy coming in to relieve you, you pass certain information on to him that he needs to know to make sure that one, he knows what's going on in the area. And so he's well informed, and it's a security and safety thing, right? Yeah. So and that's drilled into us. Like, you don't withhold information because that's how potentially someone can get hurt, right?
Yeah, it's like standard operating procedure for you guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he was like, that didn't sit well with me. That was something that it bugged me. And so for him to finally come out and like talk to us, and there were things that we started finding out, things that it was his information, and he was able to, and he was willing to share it with us. And we started connecting some dots and some things that he was unaware of, and there was some pretty eye-opening stuff that we were finding out and talking about and with him, especially. And that's one of those things is like, you're hitting on like the topics of like the television show, like you can see the formula on the reality television side of things, right? And for the last 20 years, people have been watching this. And we know that there are shows out there. We have production guys who have worked on some of these other ghost hunting shows and stuff, and they're sitting there telling us, oh yeah, this group was out there, and you'd have the producer back there hitting something, right?
I knew it. Freaking knew it.
You know,
Yeah.
and there are those shows that do that. But
I mean, you can
but-
see that shit from a mile away.
yes, and that's where, like, when our show was pitched, they were like, we're not gonna do, like, it was almost dead from the get-go because people were like, oh, not another ghost hunting show, not another, you know.
Yeah.
But they were like, no, like, we're gonna, like, actual scientists, actual scientific experiments.
Yes.
You know, like, that's what it's about. And then,
I've said it before, that if you're expecting the sensationalism from one of these ghost hunting shows, I mean, I watch those ghost hunting shows as well, and I mean, I'll admit it. But I mean, the difference between those shows and this show is that this show is, you know, it's all based on science. So the fan base for the ghost hunting shows won't necessarily resonate. You know, they've got their little EMF meters and whatever the hell they use, but some episodes, you know, are kind of, you know, you're kind of waiting for something to happen and nothing really happens. But I mean, it's science. You can't force it, you can't force it. And I've said this before in the last episode we did, was that it gives the show more credibility.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, is like, there's other things that we've learned on that side that the production company's feet are being held to. Like, they're being held to doing something due to their contracts. Yeah. Right. And so they're trying to overcome that on their side. And then on our side, we got two scientists out there that are like, what the heck? You know, like, no, we're wanting to try and come up with an experiment, you know. And then on top of that, there is a television show side of this. There is an entertainment side of this. Yes. So we're trying to find these experiments that are visual, so people on the watching can see something visual and cool. But that is a scientific experiment. And yes, we have all these other crazy things happening, but how do you show some of that? And there have been some things that have happened that you're not going to see, because basically we've been told that people aren't going to believe it anyways. You know, like, there's people that think some of this stuff is just some really nice special effects and stuff, but it's not. Like, all what you guys are seeing is real. Like, our reactions are stuff. And then yes, there is. Yeah, you have to understand too, for those who are watching this, is we do an experiment and they try and get our reactions. They try and get our real stuff in the moment as best as they can. And I'll say, like, the camera guys are amazing at that. The way they're able to pick right where we're pointing, like, they're catching some crazy shots. But then yes, we have to go back and they're like, okay, like, that was amazing, but, you know, we heard Brian over here say this. We heard Tom over here say this. Can you guys say that again, or maybe say it this way? And then that's where some of that does get on our nerves, because we're like, no, look, because if it feels like they're telling us what to say too much, then no. And we're like, no, I'm not going to say that. Yeah, then it becomes like a scripted. And they're like, well, but then they're also going, well, the way you said it was like, maybe not everybody will understand it. So there is always this trying to find that middle ground and work together. Right? Yeah. And it is challenging, yes, but at the end of the day, science versus the production, and you guys kind of have to mesh together to get the best. I understand what you're saying. We are, you know, there is a product that is being made, and we've got two sides here, and they're trying to find that middle ground. And I would say overall, it's a good experience, and we're trying to do a good job with that. And again, that's why we're doing the website too, is be like, because people have been like, oh, well, so when the television show's not going on, nothing's going on. No, it's still going on. And that's what we're able to show, you know. Not carry on. Oh, but so yeah, you have these different elements that there's, and I wish people could understand. It's a lot of somewhere on the backside. Yeah, I understand fully. I mean, it can be. I mean, you guys could have the greatest footage. Well, footage, but it wasn't shot because the camera guy was focusing on something else, or whatever. And again, like you said, in the end, they are worried about the production side of things, while you guys are worried about the, you know, getting results, doing the experiments and all that stuff. So it's I can imagine there must be,
butting heads a bit and frustrations on,
Yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, overall it's a good experience. So and it is cool. Like again, like I'm dying. Like let me put it this way: is every year we've had like one or two things happen that we're like, oh my gosh, this is like the finale, or like this is such a cool thing, right? And that is like something so cool, so crazy that it's that's guaranteeing like another season, if you will, of this happening, right? We had like 6 of those things happen this year. It was crazy, like it was almost nonstop. I can't believe we're still trying to wrap our heads around some of this stuff. And what's cool is, again, we had third-party experts.
And this is all in season 4.
Oh yeah, this is all season 4. Season 4, it like every year, like season 1 was good. It was good. We had some cool stuff happen. Nothing like crazy. It was good. Season 2 blows season 1 out of the water, right?
Yeah.
Season 2 was really good. Like fantastic. Season 3 blows season 2 out of the water.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Season 4 is like, I don't even know. Like, how are we gonna top that? I don't know. And that's one of our fears. One of the things we talked about was like, what? Like, how?
Put Ghislaine Maxwell in Homestead to tie her up and see what happens. Right. That's season 5.
Right.
That is season 5. I mean, I think paranormal and true crime should mix it a little bit and just see what happens.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff. Yeah.
Travis Taylor was named as the chief scientist for a UFO task force.
So he, going back to season 1, he started saying he was again one of the big skeptics too. He was like, he was like, oh, I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna show these crazy hillbillies or whatever, what it is, and in like the first 2 weeks and show's done, right? He's gonna go out there and disprove it. He ends up losing his mind and becoming crazy like the rest of us, right? And becomes one of the biggest believers. But going back to season 1, he essentially, because of what he's doing on his job side of things, he starts seeing things that goes, wait a minute, because he's privy to some information through his private job, right? Which was dealing with on government contracts and different programs and stuff. And so he goes up to some of the people that he knows in the Pentagon. He's like, look, like there's something going on out here, and we need to find out if it's near peers or something else, right? Like there is something going on out here, and I'm seeing some stuff that is of concern. And so the individual, an individual comes in, and basically he's the one running all this. And he basically comes in and is like, hey, Travis, like I need a guy like you to be able to do this. And that's how Travis went in, because of what was happening on Skinwalker Ranch.
Okay. And he's been, well, Kevin Leonard asks, Travis has been criticized for having an anti-scientific embrace of the paranormal. Do you think some things are just beyond our understanding of science?
So this has been one of those things is Travis and Eric, I have heard them rant and rave about this. So what's non-scientific? Because there's these people out there saying, oh, that's fringe science. Well, there's no such thing as fringe science.
Yeah.
Science is a process.
Yeah.
Science isn't a religion, guys.
Maybe physics would be
a
better.
So and that's the thing is, like, there's things that we're seeing that, according to our understanding of physical laws, shouldn't be happening, right? But we're seeing it. And that's again what's so exciting with season 4, especially because what we had happen. But anyways, when it comes to the science side and spiritual side, I know I've talked to you about this before. I'm one that thinks they go like this. I don't know how some things line up. Some things are like this. I don't know. But that's the cool thing on the science side of things. That's the journey. That's figuring it out. That's
Yeah.
doing things, having that question, forming the hypothesis, going out and seeing if you can learn why, right? That's the whole point. And then, yes, because I'm one that is going back to the observer effect, this is something that I talk about in my live events where I go talk to people about stuff. Our minds, science is proving more and more and more that our minds on the subatomic quantum level are affecting things.
Mm.
So if you've been into like self-improvement, betterment, things like that, there's certain names that you're going to know. Bob Proctor, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins is the big one nowadays, right? They're teaching things and tools that, guess what? Guess where you find them too? In the Bible, in other religious texts, the Book of Mormon. You see these things that have been talked about for thousands of years. But it's again, it goes back to the saying of, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make it drink. Like, I can talk to people till I'm blue in the face about things like this. But if you're not in a state where you're kind of having that conversion, if you will, there's nothing I can tell you that will sink in. Because I
think as well, just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it can't happen.
Exactly.
I've kind of got that perspective, because to me, you know, I don't hate the human species. I just think we kind of fuck things up a lot. Just excuse my language, but
you and me are right there, buddy.
Yeah, and I mean, just because we don't, you know, with regards to, you know, let's say there are aliens and UFOs and all that stuff. Now, to a lot of people of, you know, it's, you know, to think that we, and this is just my opinion, to think that we are the most intelligent beings in the entire universe, that's a scary fucking thought. Because I mean, we can't even figure out shit, like we can't even live amongst ourselves. I mean, there's a war going on now between Russia and Ukraine as we speak. I mean, racism is a big thing, and we haven't even figured that shit out yet. So for us to say,
I agree that, you know, I'll put it this way: is one of the conversations we have is people are like, oh, what do you think it is? You know, like that question, or like that Travis has been, you know, criticized and things like that. And it's like, look, at the end of the day, if people are watching the show and they're hoping for something, like, that's our point. Is one, Skinwalker Ranch is such a big opportunity because one of our things that we talk about is the truth matters.
Yeah,
there is such a thing as the truth.
I remember reading, and I could be wrong, I don't know how accurate this thing was, but I remember reading that NASA has now suddenly launched a UFO program.
I've seen something along those lines too. You know, just because of the realm, I guess, I post about Skinwalker Ranch, and I've tagged like UFO and stuff. I see some of these same headlines and stuff, and I'll read.
You know, are you telling me that after all these years, NASA has never ever looked into this?
Right? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd be surprised if they haven't. You know, that's my thing. Is you think that'd be something that would be in that realm?
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that there's tons of questions, there's tons of things like that, and that, again, like, kind of coming back to what we were talking about, is like, we believe the truth matters. We, you know, and like I can point back again to my one experience that we talked about earlier with the devil worshippers. I can tell you from my perspective, what I've learned, what I've been through in multiple modalities now, that there is good and there is evil.
Yeah.
And you know, and I have the stories on both, and I can tell you what I was feeling, and it wasn't just me, it was other people. Like, and it's one of those things, like, I noticed other officers, we all deal with things our own ways, but I actually have a bit different outlook on stuff, because it's like, everybody's like, oh, why does this bad stuff happen? You know, and they always like to point at, like, oh, well, if there's God, why does he allow this to happen? Well, one, if you go back and read the book, it tells you there was a war in heaven fought over your and my agency, our power of choice to choose. And that's what it all comes back to, is the power of choice.
Yeah.
And God, if he's real and created these laws, he cannot and will not affect your power of choice. There was one side and that was his plan, was to send us here. We come and we don't have any memory, that's the process of birthing and all that stuff. We don't have any memory of our previous existence. And we are given the ability to know on the inside if something is good or not. Right? Like you walk down the street and people someone does something, and most people be like, they'll kind of have that little gut check of, I don't know how I feel about that. Like we've all got that capability. A great story. I don't know if this is rooted in truth, but I could very well see it. But you have these two sons, and their father was an alcoholic. Right?
Yes. And
the one son becomes very successful, doesn't drink, doesn't do anything like that, doesn't do any drugs, doesn't do anything like that. And they're like, okay, what was the main reason why you went down this path? He's like, because of my dad.
Yes.
Right? He's like, I saw what he was doing and I did not like it. And I was determined to change my life and the future of my own family. They go to the other son, same thing, massive alcoholic, major problems, been in and out of the jail, things like that, right? And they're like, why do you do this? And he's like, because of my dad. Same father, two different outlets, right?
Yeah.
And this is where you start getting into really some interesting things. And I'll pull it back to the ranch this way. One that I don't tell this story very often, but I'm starting to, because I think it's a way I think I can help people.
Okay.
And it comes back to our minds do affect everything, right? And we have that power within us to create. We have the power within us to make good decisions. So 2018, I've been on the ranch for Halloween. I wasn't full-time security at this point. It was still, very early in the ranch, right? Well, I've been learning these tools and this the Bob Proctor's. I've been listening to him a lot. I've been doing the self-empowerment stuff, right? And I learned this tool, and it was called You Write Your Own Story.
Okay.
And so 2018 happens, January 1st, New Year's, and everybody does their, my New Year's resolutions, right? Well, mine was like, and I was like, okay, going along that lines. I was like, okay, if this stuff's real, I'm dedicating myself to this tool and to these other things that I've learned. And so what I did was you write your story. And essentially it's you take a piece of paper or whatever, and you put at the top, my name is Kaleb Bench, and and my story goes like this. And the way I learned it is you don't worry about how it's going to happen. You only just know it's going to. And this sounds a lot like the faith stuff, right?
Yeah.
It goes hand in hand with it. So, but the part of this that I learned was the very first paragraph you write is something so out there, so crazy. All you could do is giggle. It would just be so cool if it happened, right? And it could be anything, as long as it's moral, legal, and ethical, right? Yeah. Those are kind of the rules. Okay. But so I put in there, at that time, all the Star Wars stuff was coming back around, and I've always been a big Star Wars guy. I've always been a big fantasy guy, right? And I was like, okay. And I saw this this sweepstakes or this drawing or whatever, and they're like, if you win this, you could be an extra that will be placed in a spot where you're in the movie, right? And I was like, okay, that'd be cool. I don't know how this will ever freaking happen. Again, that's part of it, though. You're not worried about the how. So I just put in there, I act in the Star Wars movie. I become really good friends with like this person, and I have this type of relationship. This is what happens. Okay. Right. Then I go through and I make some other paragraphs of other areas in my life that I wanted certain goals to happen. Right. Well, And all I did was read it every day. And there's some other things that I did also in line with this to really help it, some other tools. But essentially, I read that and I listened to music, so like instrumental music. So there's no words, I don't want other people's words in my head as I'm doing this. Like I'm just visualizing this, and it's not like I'm again, I'm not worried how it's going to happen. 9 months later, we're out there shooting the pilot for Skinwalker Ranch, the first season.
Okay, all right. Not quite Star Wars, but it's
not Star Wars, but it's in the realm, right?
It's in the realm, yeah. Okay.
So this is one of those things that I talk about is circumstantial evidence. You know, I can tell you at 2018, at that point, nobody was thinking, at least within our team, Skinwalker television show.
Yeah.
Nobody on our team was even thinking this was some kind of possibility or anything. And I just wanted to see different things happen in my life, right? And I thought, and I believe, and now I can tell you that after that experience, like I was sitting out there and it took me about a week to go, wait a minute. Like, 9 months later, I'm sitting there and we shoot this pilot and stuff. And like a week later, I was like, I go back and I read my story. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. And I'm like, I can't prove that I did A and B happen, but it's pretty damn close.
It kind of relates to what's that book that was pretty big at one time as The Secret.
Yeah,
I think
it's kind of you're hitting right on it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So The Secret,
law of attraction, something.
Yeah, the law of attraction. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is that's an actual scientific law too. It's just when you go to the science side, it's just named something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But this is what's really cool is Travis comes out, he's the guy that they bring out to be the science. The book that he wrote, The Science Behind the Secret.
Oh, okay.
So I highly suggest it if that's something that's interesting to people is you go and read that. And Travis literally is talking about how there is scientific evidence. And I can't remember how long ago he wrote this book, but at this time it was still kind of some hard stuff. How do you really start talking about some of the stuff, or like where's the science? But he lays out different experiments that have been done and really did show that our mind is affecting stuff on the subatomic level or the subconscious, and whatever you want to call it. And that's what's really cool. And then that comes back to the ranch is like we're calling stuff the observer effect. Like how much are our minds affecting things?
Yeah. Well, it's very. I mean, can you believe I've never watched a Star Wars movie?
You haven't?
Do you know what? I'm not a huge science fiction fan. As I've got a huge fascination with UFOs and stuff like that. So you'd think that I would be, but I've tried to watch Star Wars a number of times, and I can't. I don't know why.
That's fine. I'm not gonna,
no disrespect to the movie franchise and everything. It's massive.
And that's there's so much, and the more they add to it and stuff. And the last you don't need to watch the last three movies. They were terrible. They were just garbage. Like a lot of movies coming out today.
I'll get there one day where I'll just watch everything. I'll just force myself. I suppose if I just get into it, but
right.
But in any case, okay. Listen,
I've actually
carry on.
Oh, I was just gonna say you're not the first person who's said that too.
Oh, really?
I know other people that have never watched it, and I'm like, if you're not a fan, you're not a fan. Like that. If you're not interested, you're not interested. It's fine.
It's weird though, because I am, I've got a deep fascination with UFOs and stuff like Skinwalker Ranch, the paranormal and stuff like that. So you think that would be right up my alley, but I don't know. I can't explain it. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why. But okay, Marcy Richards asks, is there any relation, in your opinion, between missing 411 and the phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch?
Okay, so I have watched Missing 411. The Hunted, I believe, is what it's called.
Yeah, I
So,
think David Paulides is the guy's name.
yeah, so he was for those who don't know, I don't know if you've watched it or
I've
read
watched it.
any
Yeah.
of his books. Okay. So short answer, yeah. There were some things that made me go, wait a minute. We've had very similar things happen on the ranch. Not so much kind of what I think they're trying to hint towards when it comes to like say Bigfoot or something towards the end.
Yeah.
But there were definitely things that I've witnessed on the ranch that line up with many things that those different stories were talking about, and it was very interesting to me. And I thought that was it. The first time I watched it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding!"
Mm.
You know. But for whatever reason, some of it seemed like it was pretty much spread out all over the place.
Yeah.
And what surprised me was there was such a heavy concentration of it on the ranch. You know, so it just made me think.
Mm.
I think there could be a connection now.
It was some of those, yeah, some of those ones were I think there was if I remember correctly, there were two different versions of the missing 411. I think there was the one with the hunters, and then there was another one with just people going missing, you know, normal people going missing.
The one I watched was mostly about it was centered mostly with hunters.
That's the one
because what was interesting was they talk about the gear, they talk about different things like that. Like, yeah, if you're out hunting and stuff, your rifle is probably going to be the first thing you do drop or get rid of, but at the same time, that's probably the thing that could save you too the most.
Yeah.
You know, that literally will keep you from starving.
Yeah.
You know, or you can use it to signal. You can use it for it's a tool. It's a very useful tool.
Mm.
But so that's the one that I'm familiar with. I haven't read any of the books. That's I watched that one. And I've been meaning to get to some of the books and read a little bit more and learn from it. I thought it was, I point this out is there's a lot of the prior law enforcement that get into this stuff.
Mm.
And I can see why is because we have the systems that we learn during our investigations. Like we learn how to categorize, we learn how to, we notice things that other people don't notice. We're looking for those things that are out of place. And that's one of those things that's helped me on the ranch a lot, where I've noticed things that I've been like, hey, wait a minute. And I bring it to someone's attention and they're like, hey, that's weird.
Well, I suppose the cool thing is as well, you kind of come to the ranch with a kind of a different perspective, more of a law enforcement perspective, whereas Travis and Eric are like scientific. And, if those two perspectives mesh, it's a good thing. I suppose it's more effective. Yeah.
Well, and that's what's cool is I actually use that as one of the things. Examples that I use is we say a lot of the same things just in different ways, and this goes across the board. Yeah. So you have a scientific and a criminal investigation. Well, there's a lot of similarities in both of those. So like I get called somewhere that's very similar to someone starts questioning something or starts forming a hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
I show up and I start gathering witness statements. Well, there's some scientific investigations where they're going around and they're asking people, hey, what did you see? What happened? Especially on the UFO side.
Yeah.
Right. So same process, just different words for some of the same stuff. And another one of that is your science and your religion stuff. Science would probably use the words energy and matter. Your religionists or your spiritual people use spirituality and physical.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crossover in a lot of these areas, and it's interesting when you start seeing them.
And with regards to some of the entities and stuff, and let's say there are UFOs, why do you think they haven't made themselves known? And it's actually a thing that I was watching this show with Elon Musk, and he was asked the same question. Now, you'd think he would kind of believe that we are not alone in the universe. He doesn't. He says, well, if there are aliens, they've been pretty subtle about, coming forward or anything. And he says, well, there's no evidence, then it doesn't exist. So he seems pretty which is surprising that he doesn't really believe in it, since he wants to put people on another planet, which is But why do you think they haven't come forward? And
I guess it's it's an interesting question, and who says they haven't tried, or who says they don't, and and that's one of those hard things is, Tom's told me a story years ago when he went to some conference, and the point was to promote the television show before it was coming out, but supposedly there was some individual that was like 400 pounds talking about how he had sired like 2 different alien races. And I won't get I won't get into it too much, but it's literally one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm not saying that it didn't happen.
Did he sire 2 alien races?
So like he was talking about, you'd have to ask, if you ever get the opportunity, ask Tom about it, and he tells a story fantastically. It's hilarious.
He's 400 pounds.
Yeah, he's this huge dude, and it's like, okay, maybe some crazy alien species thought that guy had something in his genome that was some hidden amazing thing, and they took it, right? I don't know. Right. But it's also one of those things where it's like, kind of on the who says they don't, and it's also I point at like the religion side of things is how many times have you had someone or heard these stories about someone says like they were in some crazy car wreck or something, and they felt like some hands grab them and like move them in a way that they couldn't have done, or you hear the stories about like this little kid. I've heard multiples of these stories where this little kid who's never been to church, never been anything like that, and he's in a very terrible situation home-wise, and he finally gets rescued. Then he sees a picture of Jesus, and he's like, he was there that night, and he was keeping me safe in my room when mom and dad were killing each other.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, how many of those stories can you hear before you start going, maybe there's something to it? If you're not someone who's religious at all, how many of those do you need?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the same with UFOs, whatever paranormal activity there is. I mean, there's been so many depictions of it. I mean, there are, with their petroglyphs of the stuff. I mean, which date back, centuries and whatever. And Carl Vibe, who I was fortunate enough to have on the show as well, Carl the Crusher, he actually made a very valid point. He says, you know what, unless when you hear these things, you can form your own opinion, but it's always best to speak to that person kind of like head on or visit the place, and you'll kind of instinct will kick in, and you'll pretty much get a more general consensus of, is this true or is this, made up or whatever, which makes sense.
Oh yeah, and it's one of those things. Like I can tell you, I'm pretty sure I shared this experience with you last time we talked, that Travis and I were literally 20 feet from something.
Was that the rabbi thing?
Not the rabbi thing, the floating rectangle.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm on that. I would actually put that one not in like a spiritual experience. I'd put that one more in like, a close encounter kind of UFO type experience, just from what I was seeing. But then at the same time, we talk about, people are always asking us if we're going to open a portal and something. And I'm like, well, maybe we have. What's a portal look like?
Yeah.
And the more I think about it, like the rabbi night, that potentially that maybe we did. And the rabbi, he was telling us that's a sacred power that they've known about for years, and he was telling us what we should expect, and we saw something in the FLIR. So
it's very if all this stuff is true and they have this advanced technology. I mean, some of the stuff that's been seen, like the Tic Tac UFO and all this stuff, I mean, it's technology that is so advanced, and if it is ours, cool, but if it's not, do you guys sometimes feel that you guys can do whatever experiments you want to, if these things do not want to be found, or seen, they've got the technology to kind of block whatever you guys are doing in a sense.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we've had multiple conversations along this lines, and it happens every year. And we always ask that question too, is like, are we just being like toyed with?
Yeah.
Or are we being pointed in the right direction? Or, like why are we seeing what we're seeing? Because like one of the funnier inside jokes is Travis and Eric say, if I was going to make something up, this would not be
Yeah.
it. And because we have stuff happen and they're like, what, why, like how? That's not even possible. And so we have things like that, and you're making me think, like kind of going back to some of the things we talked about is, one, we have finite minds. It's pretty much shown that we have finite minds. How can we limit an infinite being potentially, right? If there's an infinite being out there, we cannot limit him. That thing or person or whatever, that entity would know things that we can't even comprehend, right?
Exactly.
And then also like, it's one of those fun things to think about.
And the thing is, you can only speculate. You really can. I mean, we as humans are so different from any other species on Earth. I mean, we're obsessed with technology. Maybe we are an alien species kind of busy evolving. Because I mean, now you hear things of Elon Musk. He's working on this Neuralink technology. I don't know if you've heard heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard some different things that he's been working on, and some different thing, and and that's the thing too, is like there's stuff out there that if people knew that it was out there, and that the government or governments had access to it, they'd be so mad.
Well, essentially, that chip is going to pretty much allow us to communicate without speaking.
Yeah.
Which I think there've been reports of people who've been abducted or whatever that say, well, the aliens didn't really speak. They just kind of
the thoughts were there.
Yeah. So,
well, that kind of touches on one subject. Have you ever heard of remote viewing?
Yes.
Okay, so this has been something that we've talked about, and we haven't really ever come out as a team, but I can tell you that there's been
just explain what it is, though, because I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard about it.
Okay, so remote viewing is essentially like you can see something going on in another place, like almost telepathy kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
If you know the movie Men Who Speak to Goats, like talks about there was a government program where they were they were trying to figure this out. But I can tell you, we have had an individual on the ranch who was tied to a government program years ago. He's a very well-known individual in that realm. But I can tell you this, is it's real, and it's scary as hell. Because of what some of these people can see and what they can do. But it's also one of those things where we don't really know how to approach it yet, because our thought is, okay, if you have this gift, why go down to that Walmart and start finding all those missing kids that are on that wall.
Yeah.
All these, or why, if you have such a thing, why are you not using it for good?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Because a lot of the people that we've met, it's been used in like counterintelligence kind of things, and I know how crazy that sounds, but I can tell you, I've seen it. It's real. We've had experiments done on the ranch that show it's real.
Well, I mean,
it's crazy.
We generally only use a very small percentage of our brains.
Yeah.
I think it's like, I don't know the exact percentage, is like 5 or 7% or whatever the case may be. But I mean, what if you
somewhere, very small percentage, something like that. I want to say they've been like, okay, maybe it's up to like 10 or something total. But there's things that we don't know, we don't have an understanding of. And that's, and that's one of those things, is like, maybe that's a good thing.
Well, the thing is, I think it's kind of something that should be accepted. I think it's, and I don't think people want to accept it. I don't think we want to accept that we are not the smartest species or whatever the, it's a strange one. It's, yeah.
Oh, I know. And that's one of those things. It's like a hubris thing. It's the, it's, it's the karma stuff. You know, you start getting these people who get so drawn into one realm that they don't know how to accept anything else, you know, and that's one of those things is, again, why I think that I go down the chosen path I do, because there's a lot of retrospection that you have to have and you have to go through. You're told to question, you're actually told to do that.
Well, I think if, you know, with the question of are we alone in the universe, I think both answers are kind of equal scary. Because if the answer is we're alone in the universe, well, that's, you know, shit. And
yeah,
if we aren't, it's kind of like, okay, shit again. But yeah, so it's kind of, yeah, again, it's
well, and you know, it's, I would say scientifically, because if life, they, you know, a lot of scientists will say that life is a single organism, right?
Yeah.
Well, didn't they find microorganisms or something in the Jupiter moons, in the ice or something, in the water or something like that?
Well, they found how many planets which can be which does have the potential for us to inhabit it or something like that.
I know what you're talking about. I saw a similar thing that came out where they said they finally got enough information and a lot of data showing that they found at least like 56 planets or something like that.
Yeah.
That have the exact same markers or a lot of the same characteristics as Earth.
Yeah.
So they're like, there's at least, yeah, they're like, there's these 56 planets that they're going, yeah, there very well could be life on these planets because they're basically within those parameters that we find Earth in, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I guess that's my thing too, is I always tell people too, when this subject comes up, is by definition, God is an alien.
Exactly.
You know, he's you know, and that's my thing, is like, I don't know how it all ties together. I do believe that there's other worlds out there. I do believe there's other stuff like that. And that's from a scientific side. And on my religious side, we've been told that worlds have been created without number. And if God is who I think he is, he's not going to just make one place where people are or living things are going to be. He's going to fill it all, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I'd like to point at Star Trek on this, is a lot of people talk about how Star Trek is based more in scientific things and how a lot of things could be. And it's like, look at a lot of the alien races. They're very human. So, you know, and they talk about you have to have certain things happen to get a certain, like an organism like us.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so it's like, who knows? And it's funny because they actually put like a God figure in there, the Q, if you know who that is. But Q is like, is like God. He's
okay.
You'd have to look him up and understand who Q is.
Okay.
And so it's funny for them to put that in to me, because they always talk about how Star Trek is very like supposed to be very realistic and based in science and stuff.
Okay. Another one, Kristen Lane wants to know, what is the strangest thing that has happened to any of the crew members?
Oh man. I guess in what category?
Can't ask her now.
Right. Strangest thing. Well, I would say,
I suppose paranormal.
I would say I'll go with one that they've all agreed at this point has been one of the craziest one. And if you go back to the telescope night or season 3, they show during the experiment with the airplane where we're doing push broom over the ranch, and it's a GPS experiment, and they're looking for other things, right? But what happens is it's like something was recording us or playing us back through our own equipment, right? Like, I don't know if you remember our voices echoing through.
Yeah.
Well, it was Travis and Tom and Bryant inside the command center, and this was echoing through their sound equipment as if something was picking us up and rebroadcasting them.
I think you guys saw yourselves or something like that as well, if I'm not mistaken, or anyway, tell the story.
I think you're thinking of what Travis and I ran into, but one of the creepiest things was that, and I'll say for these guys, and so, and then go to the telescope night. That it happened again during the telescope night where, everybody on the helipad that had a microphone on, well, it wasn't everybody. It was just like 3 or 4 of us on the core team.
Okay.
It was like we were being rebroadcast, like something was, again, listening to us, picking us up, and rebroadcasting us back to ourselves. And so, and what they did, is they shut everything off. They made sure all the equipment was off, everything around us, because, okay, was it our own equipment doing this, right? Was the question. And so we shut everything off. And even through these systems, it was as if something was still picking us up, like, and rebroadcasting us to us.
This was season 3, right?
Yeah. And you don't see it. Like the night of the telescope experiment should have been like 2 or 3 episodes by itself, because we had so many crazy things happen. And that was one of them. And it's happened. It happens it's happened multiple times. Another one that was pretty recent is Travis, Eric, and I were sitting in the command center, and we were talking about something, and it was as if like some kind of electrical arcing was happening in the air next to Travis and I can't remember what we were talking about exactly, but it was like something was like right next to us, and we could hear it like sparking. We could hear it like as if something was like warping in or something. It was weird, and we literally looked at each other like, "Did you hear that?" Like all 3 of us were like, "Did you hear that?" And it was like this large electrical pop in the air right next to us. It was crazy, but we have stuff like that happen all the time. It's, well, within reason, I guess. It's not like every week, but.
Have you ever come close to shooting at something?
That one night where Travis and I saw that rectangular object floating in front of us. That was probably the closest, but I've drawn my weapon at least 3 or 4 times now, that for a good reason.
Yeah. Listen, and okay, Charlene Huval, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So she's touched upon red mercury. I don't know if you guys if you've ever heard of that. I read into it. It supposedly it's kind of a mineral, I suppose, that has nuclear abilities, and it can be found in the mouths of ancient Egyptian mummies. And it can also supposedly open portals. Cool. The only thing that I can think of that I know we've talked about using mercury for some different stuff because of some properties. Okay.
Like if I remember right, like they found that the Aztecs or the Mayans, they would make half bowls and they would fill it with mercury.
All right.
And essentially it works like a periscope or a telescope. Sorry.
And this is just normal mercury. This isn't necessarily red mercury.
I think so. Don't quote me on any of this, but my understanding is that's how they literally were able to map the stars that they.
Okay.
Because like you put that in the bowl and you look down and it literally like you can see all the stars and stuff like perfect. It's I guess if I remember right, but we've talked about using mercury in some different experiments, and because of some of the properties, and I know there's been some discussion and stuff, but that's not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
So I don't think I could give her a good answer.
I've never heard of red. I had to kind of look into it, and I've never heard of it. But supposedly it gets sold by certain sites online for like exorbitant amounts of money, which but in any case,
it's kind of new. That's new to me.
Yeah, me too. And then she also asks, do you think there is a link between radiation and satanic forces at work at Skinwalker Ranch?
My off the cuff answer is probably no,
Okay.
but because the times that we've had the radiation stuff happen, we haven't had any connection that we know of to any kind of like devil worshiping stuff happening, right?
Mm.
We were doing other experiments, we were doing other things, and they were more weird experiences.
Okay.
Where we had the radiation burns and stuff happen, and then the devil worshiping stuff that I've my one big experience that I've had, and the other times that we've kind of no, short answer no, and then connection wise, thinking about it, probably not either, but they seem to be different experiences, and there's different things going on whenever we have like that dark evil feeling compared to when we have the radiation stuff happen.
Okay. All right.
I hope that's
are you guys worried about the radiation? Personally? Because it's something that me and Kaleb, that myself and Chris Bartel also touched upon in the podcast with him. Yeah.
Yes and no, I guess, because it can be scary stuff. But then we've had other individuals who've been out that are experts in radiation and stuff.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of narrative pushed when it comes to radiation that it scares a lot of people. But it's like, if you understand how it works and that there are steps that you can do to be safe and take care of it. And again, it's like, okay, think about Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Yeah, you have higher cases of cancer and stuff, but then go back and look at those cities. There's millions and millions of people living there still, and they're not all killing over from radiation poisoning,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's bad things associated with it, but then it's also like, it's not, if you know how to take care of it, it's not. And this is coming from guys that I've talked to who have military background working in those areas.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, it's a big, powerful, bad thing that can happen, but it's not the doomsday thing that everybody thinks it is.
Mm. Okay. Well, going for almost 2 hours, and I can go for another 2. But
I know my wife told me I'd probably
you're starting to get into trouble now. Yeah,
a little bit.
No, 100%. Kaleb, thanks again. I really appreciate it. It's great having you back. Man. And okay, so season 4 out sometime next year.
Yeah.
And I'll drop the link to the website. Just say the website again.
Skinwalker-ranch.com. Go be an insider. You're a part of it in ways that you want to be in other ways.
I'll put that on screen throughout the entire podcast as well, and I'll drop a link in the description so that people can go check it out. Great. Sweet. Great. Kaleb, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, man.